send FBI agents would be to tip them off to the investigation. So they used an informant, a source, whatever you want to call them, an asset. And this person reached out, met with them, and tried to suss information out of them. It's not clear how successful it was, but it certainly isn't a spy planted in the Trump campaign to dig up political dirt. They had an open investigation. They had probable cause. They felt that this was warranted. And, at some point, you got to kind of look at what is normal practice and what is done here and what has been said by the president and some of his allies in Congress, and weigh the two and decide, what do we want to do here and what's more accurate? And do we want to have a bigger conversation about how the law enforcement conducts its business? Fine. But we can see no evidence that there was a political hit or a political hit job in the works here.
So because this completely contradicts what the president and Rudy Giuliani have been saying about a spy being implanted in the campaign, did you call the White House for a response about this academic?
I think the White House has said, they're referring questions elsewhere. Look at the tweets. Yeah, so that's really it. I think the White House has said, the president has said what he wants to say on this. There definitely does seem to be an attempt, though, by some of the president's allies to try and discredit the investigation and turn the focus onto the people who participated in it rather than what they found or what they're finding still.
Mm-hmm. So, John, I want to bring you in now because both CNN's and Matthew's reporting is that the informant was not used for political purposes. So what's your reaction to this new report?
Well, it's clear that the White House is running a fog machine, trying to confuse things. They might have been tipped to fact this informant had been uncovered. It's hard to tell how much they knew about it, but it's obviously it's the vigilance of the FBI. They're doing exactly what they should have done. They're running the early stages of a counterintelligence investigation during a presidential campaign, and they were doing everything not to politicize the investigation or get involved in the campaign. If they'd have sent a couple agents to meet with Papadopoulos and Page or Flynn, it would have been a very different matter. But they sent instead apparently a well-placed, and from what I read between the lines, Republican, somebody who would be able to be of like mind of many of these people on some issues, to go talk to them and brush up against them and find out what they could find out about what was going on.
Yeah. And Matthew, as you reported in this piece, the Justice Department has said that the exposure could pose a grave risk to the source's life. Are you concerned about that?
Of course. That's why we didn't name them. I don't want to weigh who's under threat for what. We didn't name them because we don't normally name these sources. But I think the Justice Department also has another issue here too, which is if people fear that they are going to be exposed, if they are sources for politically unfavorable investigations or investigations that displease the people in power, they're not going to be sources for those kinds of things. And that's going to hamper law enforcement, hamper the collection of intelligence overseas. And that's a real issue, both for the FBI, for the DOJ, for the CIA as well. And I think all those agencies are deeply, deeply concerned about this right now.
John, I have to ask you, do you remember we were talking about the unmasking of sources, and Republicans were so upset about the unmasking, saying that sources were unmasked? It turns out the story wasn't true. You don't really hear about it now. Doesn't this it's sort of hypocritical because now they want to reveal the name of a source when they were so concerned about unmasking names?
Very good point, Don. They've flipped over on the other side of the issue, and it looks like they'll throw anybody under the bus to cause confusion if they think they can somehow impinge the investigation or try to discredit it, which I don't think this is going to do. The fact that the FBI felt that they had to send somebody out to talk to these people, that they had probable cause already to do so, does not actually look good for the Trump campaign. They don't do this without justification. So I think this is a bad story for them that they're trying to confuse.
Yeah, the concern was unmasking the names of Americans. This is an American citizen working in Britain. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. When we come back, Rudy Giuliani had a lot to say this morning to Chris Cuomo. We're going to dig into his and the president's claims in light of what we now know. Breaking news now. Reports that the FBI dispatched an informant to speak with at least 2 advisors to Donald Trump's presidential campaign after the Bureau obtained evidence that the aides had ties to Russia. Let's go to Chris Cuomo now. He spoke to President Trump's lawyer this morning about the president's claim of spying. He's back with me now. Chris, as I was watching you this morning, this was the buzz, right? Your interview with Rudy Giuliani revealing some very interesting things. Before we get to that, give me your reaction on this new reporting from the New York Times about this informant.
Well, look, it advances our understanding of why we were going so slow on this. The reason that it was testy with Rudy Giuliani about this is because they didn't know that somebody had infiltrated the campaign. I know it sounds good if you want to disparage the efforts of the Department of Justice. I know it's tantalizing to take a little bit of information that there was some kind of asset in play and make it into a spy game, which you have to remember, Don, that is an ugly and pejorative term to people in the intelligence business, like Rudy Giuliani was. He knows the power of the word spy as a pejorative, and he didn't have proof, and he knew he didn't have proof, and now we get the New York Times advancing the understanding somewhat, and it just proves why we were pushing back this morning.
Well, Chris, I want to play some of it, but as I was listening to it, because the president is tweeting and folks are out here saying it as if it's fact, but Rudy Giuliani said, if it's true. And when he said that, I went, if it's true, you guys are out here acting like it is true. But this is before the news broke. Here's Chris with Rudy Giuliani.
Here's the issue that I really feel strongly about with this informant, if there is one. First of all, I don't know for sure, nor does the president, if there really was one. We're told that.
Told that by whom?
We're told that by people who, for a long time, we've been told that there was some kind of infiltration. At one time, the president thought it was a wiretap. There were some Pfizer applications, but we've never been notified that he was on a tap or an intercept.
There's never been any proof that he was on a wiretap either.
No, but
he did say it as fact many times.
I think he thought that.
Okay, so there's so much there. The wiretap, there's no proof of that. There's no proof of this guy infiltrating, this informant infiltrating the campaign. Were you surprised that he was sounds like he was beginning to backtrack there?
No, because, Rudy Giuliani is a very skilled attorney, and he knows what he knows and what he doesn't know. He's caught in a situation right now because of the needs of his client, and he has a client who happens to be our president, who is spinning things beyond the existence of demonstrable fact. So he has to say, well, the president thought it was true. He felt it was true. That's not a real basis of analysis, and that's what this president does. And many people who support him then believe things that are not true because he says them. And that's how we got into this jam on whether or not he was spied on.
Hey, Chris, we've got about 30 seconds left here. This is a definition of gaslighting, isn't it?
Well, look, I've now watched that movie twice because we use the phrase so much. And look, what's going on here is ugly politics. It's toxic politics. And there's a danger in it. All we have is the truth. They can disagree. You got to disagree with decency about what to do about things and what policies to have. But once you start messing with what is, you completely compromise any chance to get to what will be. That's the problem with lying. That's the problem with misstating facts. And that's one of the big problems we have right now with this whole Russia situation.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I can't wait for you to join us in prime time. You're like a surgeon when it comes to especially these legal issues, and we look forward to having you. June 4th, right?